Good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are in the country. I'm Matt Kale with CTI Connect. We have a great team internally from CTI Connect and from Cambium Networks here today. I'm going to give another minute or two for people to join, and we'll get started around 2:05 Eastern here. So a couple minutes and we'll get rolling. While we're waiting for a couple more people to join, wanted to take care of a little bit of housekeeping and talk about our format here today. So this is our Wireside chat. Today we're featuring Cambium, and the goal of this is an open forum. So we're not going to like bore you with slides, and you know it's not so much pre-planned. We have a rough agenda of things that we want to go through. When we get started, I'll talk about the agenda. The reason I say this is that this is a very informal format. I'm going to be asking Cambium some questions, and along with other members of CTI staff. We'd love it if you guys could chime in as we go and get your questions asked. There's going to be a lot of information. The Cambium team told me nothing is off limits today, so feel free to ask whatever you want, and we have their best and the brightest here to be able to answer those questions. And yeah, so feel free to ask a lot of questions, and I'm going to roll through them as we go and try to get pretty much everything asked. If I don't get time to get to the question that you're specifically looking for, we'll be sure to record it. We will get an answer and we'll get back to you on that. We do have from the sales team a couple members here from Cambium, and also the engineering team and internal CTI Connect engineering team. So pretty much nothing's off limits on our forum of where we're looking to go today. And with that, I think we'll get started. As I said, I'm Matt Kale with CTI Connect. I handle sales over here for us. And we also have from the Cambium team, Sakid Ahmed. He's the product manager of ePMP and QoE and kind of all things in that portfolio. Sakid, I don't know if you want to say hello.
Hello.
And then we also have Derek Underwood, Cambium Networks VP of North American Sales.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Derek and Sakid. And the newest member of the CTI Connect staff, Justin Robinson. He's our VP of Professional Services and Engineering.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for joining us, Justin. So our agenda today is that we're going to talk a little bit about the current Cambium ePMP platform. We're going to keep that pretty abbreviated. Sakid's going to go through that a little bit, and then we're going to talk about the new stuff, which is why everyone's here. So we have 3 new products that Cambium is in the process of launching, just launched, or is kind of just pulling back the shades and letting us know what they're planning on doing. So feedback is also greatly appreciated on that. So we're going to talk about ePMP, the product, where it is, kind of where it came from, in an abbreviated format. We're going to be talking about the next generation of that, the ePMP 4000. We're going to talk about their 5 gigahertz ePMP 4000 and the 6 gigahertz ePMP 4000. And then we're also going to be talking about their newest product as a service, which is QoE, quality of experience. With that being said, Sakid, do you want to jump in and talk a little bit about the ePMP history?
Yeah, sure. Highlight a few things and take it from there, and hopefully make this a bit more interactive. But you know, I mean, I don't think we need to get into the history of the product, but maybe talk a little bit about the current platforms and what we're doing with it. As most of the audience members know here, if you've been using Cambium and ePMP products, you know, fundamentally, ePMP 3000 is sort of the main platform that we are, you know, offering today, along with the 3000L. Needless to say, there's been some challenges with supply and whatnot, but things are turning around. But that's good solution out there. The exciting thing on that side of the house as we move forward is a new software release. We're not really doing much with hardware on the 3000 series, but from a software perspective, there's a 4.7 release coming, which has flexible scheduling, which has been something that our WISP community has been asking for a while. But along with that, a smart QoS feature, which today is available in 4.7 beta, but you can actually order this. It is a edge DPI engine running on the ePMP 3000 and 3000L that will detect applications going through your wireless link and prioritize, right? So if you think about your typical QoS where we're doing layer 2, layer 3 based classification rules, we kind of changed that a little bit. It's quite advanced. You're actually able to detect hundreds of applications and put them in different buckets, send them to the high priority queue if you've got gaming users, if you've got web conferencing users and things like that. So, Matt, at the end of the day, building more hardware around 11AC didn't make sense. 4.7 is potentially one of our last big releases on the 3000 family, but the smart QoS stuff is going to be pretty much a game changer. It's we're going to offer this as little as $10 a month subscription fee. Put it on AP, serve as many SMs you want, start to see granularity around your application, but you can also start doing packages around it, right? Prioritizing things.
So the idea is that without injecting that access point with additional bandwidth, you'd be able to better utilize that bandwidth and potentially put more customers on an overloaded access point?
No, that we can talk about that a little bit from a QoE perspective. This is purely another way of looking at QoS. So if you're over-the-air scheduler, what do you prioritize today? You prioritize things based on a port or an IP address or a MAC address. Mm-hmm. Now, got a lot of Zoom traffic. I'm going to prioritize Zoom over my wireless link. And in the uplink, you can also go to an SM and individually say, this SM has a bunch of gaming customers. We will put a gaming traffic prioritization. And we did some tests recently, where we mimicked let's say a high packet loss, high interference environment, and then prioritize Zoom. So you see the actual difference because now the AP is saying, hey, I detect the application, I'll put it in the front of the queue. Think of it as a new way of breathing life into existing hardware, right? You can now do QoS on applications. You can come up with new packages to sell, etc.
It sounds amazing because you could maybe give a business line more priority than you could before and be more granular and maybe have a gaming plan that covers that all areas of not necessarily higher SLA, but providing a higher quality experience for those people that want to pass additional revenue on to your ISP.
Yeah, exactly. And you can spin that as a possible revenue opportunity. Anticipating some questions, I'll just answer these right away right now, is that number one, it is running on the edge, right? So it's running on the access point. There is no additional appliance you have to buy or anything like that. Think of this as a added layer of intelligence and functionality on the AP. We don't charge this per SM or anything like that. You simply enable this on the AP. Very similar to the entitlement concept. You buy the key, you go to the support portal, activate it. Of course, you order from CTI. The pricing is pretty simple. List price is $10 per month per AP. So if you got 30 SMs on an AP, you can create these packages in the DPI QoS for all of those SMs. So that's 4.7, right? And then flexible scheduler and whatnot is coming through. So this is probably the exciting stuff.
You just hammered out 6 questions, and I'm reading through here as we're going.
Yeah, I know. I kind of saw them coming from the corner of my eye, right? Shaping. Another question was shaping per AP. So in the downlink, it is shaping per AP, but on the SM, it's the uplink that you're essentially doing Q.
Oh, interesting. Okay. There's this feature coming for the existing 3000s, 3000Ls. For the QoS QE. Do you want to maybe take, that this is going to move into our segue into your new products. So, we kind of, before we rolled into this, thought maybe that we should separate out the ePMP 4000 5 gigahertz and ePMP 4000 6 gigahertz because it's going to be separate equipment and separate hardware. Do you want to maybe start talking about the 5 gigahertz ePMP 4000?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point, Matt, because we do need to clarify some things. So the way are shaping up today is that we do have two distinct SKUs between 5 gig and the 6 gig. Needless to say, ask some questions that I've come across in the past, like why did you guys do a full wideband radio? And my short answer is that we wouldn't be talking about this product if we were venturing down the path of a wideband radio like that. A lot longer, it would be complicated, it would be super expensive. So we decided to go down the path of creating a 5 gig version and a 6 gig version. Because everything from antennas to power amplifiers, the receiver stuff, all of that gets significantly more complicated if you try to do a product all the way from 4.9 to 7.1, right? So on the 5 gig front, it's going to be known as the ePMP 4500. Anytime there's a 4, think of that as the 4th generation, which is essentially AX based. So the 5 gig is an 8x8 multi-user MIMO access point. It's going to support the 20, 40, 80 megahertz channel. One of the cool things about that is that it's going to have 1024 QAM support, which probably the first guy that 3 years ago would have said, oh no, this is crazy trying to get 1024 QAM and wireless. But I will say that our initial results and stuff show that the radio's characteristics are a lot better.
Really?
Everything in terms of,
is that really range dependent though?
Sorry?
Is that really range dependent to be able to get that module?
Absolutely. It's range and noise, right? If you have interference, that's going to matter too. But my message is that when radio starts supporting higher modulation, that means your availability of even the lower modulation, what was a 256 QAM, is now easily more achievable. Basically, your carrier to interference ratio requirement has changed. It's less now, right? By about 3 dB or so. So that's what's the exciting part, that yeah, it's unlicensed spectrum, we're moving to higher modulations, but overall you're lifting the RF capacity of the radios, right? So, and then as well as the 8x8 MIMO should bring some interesting, last but not least, it's a downlink MIMO, uplink MIMO, and an OFDMA based solution, right? We're leveraging IEEE 802.11 based stuff. So whatever AX brings under the hood, we take advantage of that and build a bunch of stuff on top, like our TDD, GPS sync, and et cetera.
So I know that, like, you know, with the AC chipset, the ePMP 3000, you had your traditional sector, and then you had your beamforming antenna. How is the architecture of this going to be? Is it going to be 2 separate antennas like that, or is it going to be drawn in one? And, you know, there's a lot of, I think beamforming is kind of partially built into the AX. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, what physically people should be expecting?
Sure. So best way to describe this is a mini 450M.
Okay.
Probably not that miniature, but it's the smaller form factor of a 450M. So the 8x8 is integrated into the whole unit. The antenna is part of it. We could probably argue about that on both sides of the coin. Why did you do it that way, not connectorized? Well, the reality is, you know, connectorized, by the time you plug all of those cables in out in the field, you know, weatherproof and all of that is just prone for mistakes, right? And we may even do things in the factory that might cause problems. So we went the route of making it all fully integrated. Having said that, I mean, we are starting to take a good look at, is there an opportunity for an 8x8 connectorized AP, right? I mean, obviously, a lot of our customers are using those horn antennas, right? So is there a way to do something there? Very early stages, but it's something we're discussing and thinking about. So obviously, customer feedback on that would be great as well.
Okay. And so the, you know, previous iterations of the radio had a like onboard GPS chip. Is that still going to be the case? You know, how should customers that have existing ecosystems, you know, plan for injection of GPS pulse?
Yeah, nothing like bringing up GPS questions here, Matt, because people are still sore from GPS issues not too long ago.
It's a lot of people have been asking about what's
yeah. We learned our lesson, let's just say. So yes, there's multiple ways of bringing GPS. Unfortunately, it's not just the onboard. It's not just a POC. You can feed it through the or with Cambium sync. By the way, this 8x8 also has DC power in and whatnot.
Oh, cool.
There's multiple ways of doing this, so we shouldn't have the challenges we had for a while there with.
How have, you know, people have this in their hands already? So there are some beta testers out there.
Not the 5 gig, not the 5
gig. Okay. how is your internal testing of that going? You know, can you
Yeah,
share about what you expect?
it's coming along okay. I mean, we still got some ways to go. Let's just talk about one of the more important topics since we are on 5 gig. Needless to say, people are going to talk about backwards compatibility, right? I mean, that's going to be a pretty important aspect to our story. Today, we are planning backwards compatibility. So an 8x8 AXAP will talk to a SM that you deploy today, i.e. 300-25, and vice versa. That compatibility, you're not going to see it, cooked and commercially out probably till early next year. But a lot of the customers on this call are going to end up doing beta. And I'll just say this, that, while compatibility is super important for that smoother migration, and ePMP 3000 compatibility gave us a lot of headaches, right? And it's not about giving Cambium headaches, it's the fact that you guys are running commercial networks and nothing like having, flaky software. So we want to cook compatibility really well. Okay. So our first focus is to get a greenfield solution out. If people are still deploying wireless and they're putting up new towers, it's a great way to get greenfield 5 gig AX-based solutions out there. And then slowly migrate other existing deployments. So that's kind of how we're thinking.
This is a big jump. Like we're talking a very large order of magnitude of performance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, obviously the components are going to be more expensive and things like that. There's going to be a price jump in order to do this, but the idea is that you leave your subscriber modules out there, so your CapEx isn't as bad and your OpEx isn't as bad because you're not having to do a bunch of truck rolls. So there's a path of migration, which a lot of other products in the market, frankly, they say they have, but they very rarely have. If somebody is maybe not in an area where they can justify either the cost or the density, is the 3000 still going to be a platform that, is that the next thing down? By down, I mean, lower cost on the market?
I think it's an important point, right? 3000 is still a very, very viable solution. It continues to be so in the valid. It's a 4x4 MU-MIMO solution. So it's real and it should be considered as your step down. Having said that, if you wanted to say, hey, I want an even lower cost point, that is also in the plan. About our the point-to-point product that we came out with, the 400C and the 425, right? 400C, that actually has the board has a place for GPS. So something like that, we're going to turn into a 2x2 AP, essentially. So you get a 4000 series 2x2 AP, 3000 series 4x4, or you can jump to an 8x8 4000 series AP.
So I saw a question come in, and I'll just go ahead and ask it. So, we roughly how on paper an ePMP 3000 should perform today on, let's say, a 40 megahertz channel. How should somebody expect the 5 gigahertz ePMP 4000 to perform total access point capacity on the same channel size?
Well, I think the best way for me to describe that would probably be percentage-wise. Like, what is the average percentage increase? You're going to see 60 to 65% increase in throughput for an AP, total capacity. And that's actually, that's without counting in the 8x8 MU-MIMO. That's just head-to-head. Okay. And there's a lot of things happening in here, right? You've got, let me just give some examples. So you've got your OFDMA, which means your concept of a small radio resource unit. So while in 11AC based solutions, when we had to send small acknowledgements, we used and wasted a lot of air resources. Now you can pack that stuff really tightly. So you can pack small packets and not eat up a bunch of bandwidth. Like guard intervals and things like that all have shortened. So long story short, that over the air resource, which is your most precious resource, you're able to pack more data into it. So the efficiency goes up. Combine that with things like the higher modulations and whatnot, you start to see a dramatic, 60% higher performance on a AX-based AP solution. That answers your question, Matt.
Yeah, very thoroughly. So you're having that overall head end increase, and then you're also having increases through the multi-user MIMO, talking to more people in that same frame. and all of the efficiencies that you're getting along with that. With the
My only concern is someone's going to record this part of the video and post it on the community when it doesn't deliver that in the initial release. Hey, that guy said it was going to be 66%.
The another question that came in on same topic, the subscribers, the Force 400s are out. Is that planned to be, the subscriber module for this?
Not really, right? If you think about the Force 400, that's a pretty high tier, beefy point-to-point product. Of course, in the world of 5 gig point-to-point product, it's very competitive. But that as a subscriber is not viable in the big picture for our customers. So there's what we call the 4525, 4000 series, 5 gig, 25 dBi, similar to your 300-25. You got to love the naming scheme, right? It's all making sense now.
Finally.
Yeah, 4525. So yeah, 25 dBi integrated dish. That's going to be sort of the mainstay 5 gig SM.
And so that'll be like the 2x2 solution?
Yeah, exactly. And look, people are asking, hey, what's the plan for channel bonding, right? Carrier aggregation. How do I get that type of 4x4 SM? My short answer to that is I look at the economics of it, and I truly believe high tier SMs like that, because a 2x2 AX SM at 80 megahertz there is no limitation on horsepower. It'll do 600, 800 meg over a gigabit, right, on the 6 gig side, as you guys saw on the 425, 400C. So for us, I think keeping costs down on the SM is key. Having $800 SMs, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't make sense. What is on the back of this type of development, we're already starting to poke and engage in what will become Wi-Fi 7, 802.11.be. There's a whole slew of things coming there, including those full wideband 5 to 7 gig products that are very economical. So, little preview that the road is not stopping here with Wi-Fi 6. There's a lot more exciting stuff that will get us in that super high tier channel bonded products, but at a significantly more competitive.
So there are some people that are, they're shooting for the target of, I want to, in my portfolio, have a 100 megabit by 25 megabit plan. And if you have this deployed in a relatively, not dense area, is that a package that you could plan to use this 5 gigahertz product for? Because I know the product is like knocking at the door, like the 3 gigahertz.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think not too long ago, I said something and put something in writing, right? Obviously, you've got caveats. I mean, there's a lot of people here that are very smart in delivering those type of bandwidths. You got oversubscription to worry about. You got interference, clean channel, all of that. But as the capacity of the SM and the APs goes higher and higher, then 100 by 25 or even higher becomes more realistic. There's no ifs and buts about it. So with the 8x8 MU-MIMO solution that has OFDMA and higher modulations, you bet you can confidently deliver those types of packages.
Great.
There was a question around the 4x4 SMs. It was just said, to be clear, there's no plan for that today.
Not in the current 4000 series platform. What I was, to give a little preview, I'll just kind of cover this one more time, is that, know this well, and Matt, this, that, we are kind of riding the wave of what the IEEE comes up with, right? We're doing a lot of proprietary stuff, but the foundation is leveraging the system on a chip that brings a lot of horsepower. So fast forward from what is Wi-Fi 6 today, you go to Wi-Fi 7. Built into some of those system on a chips is you have carrier aggregation, link aggregation, 4x4 capabilities and things like that. So it makes a lot of sense for us to start looking at that in relation to the next generation technology, so keep costs down, right? So today there isn't a plan, but it doesn't mean we're not going to do something years down the road or 3 years down the road.
Great. Is there anything else you wanted to hit on in the 5 gigahertz before we make a segue into 6?
No. Sorry, there was another question I just saw it pop up about other form factor SMs, 19 dBi, 16 dBi. Thank you for that. We are looking for feedback like that, right? We know that 16 dBi is almost too low of a gain in a North America rural broadband market, but if 19 dBi square panel is favorable, we can always Otherwise, no, 5 gig, we're good. We're good, man.
You broke up there for a second there, but you said that 19 is something that's being explored.
It's viable, yes. Keep the feedback coming on what makes sense for you.
Awesome. So let's talk 6 gigahertz. I think that's one of the reasons most people are here.
Matt, there was a question above, and I did say I would address it.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Came in from Simon. It was North America demand seemed to soften for PMP products. What's the demand environment like currently from North America WISPs? Look, I think, you know, we're in that transition period where people are looking for higher capacity packages. And I think that's why, you know, we've got so many folks on this call. We've got so much interest in 6 gig because the need for those higher speeds and higher capacities is here, even from our existing WISP customer base. And I think also from a government funding standpoint, that has slowed some of the deployments. In general, our demand, the demand for broadband and fixed wireless point-to-point, point-to-multipoint it's huge. It's never been greater. It's just a question of timing, again, of some of the government funding and also the release of 6 gig, which we think is probably the biggest. It's going to be the biggest evolution in terms of spectrum availability that we've had in quite some time. So I think demand is there. We've got to get to those packages that the market's asking for. And then Matt, there was one more question about supply chain for the new chipset versus the legacy. And look, you know, supply chain is we could have multiple hour discussions on the supply chain aspect of this, but in reality, you know, Wi-Fi 6 chipsets are typically they've been easier to get just because when you have limited amount of quantity as a chip manufacturer, they tend to lean towards the newer products. So, you know, that it doesn't mean that all of our supply chain challenges are solved, but we are really seeing improvements in our ability to deliver within lead times.
Great. Yeah. And so we have a couple polls we're going to put out there to that. Love it if everyone listening could answer. This is going to help Cambium and us decide where to spend the money and where to develop products. But first one's going to be about government funding, wireless, fiber, and what your plans are. You know, Cambium's building a product to increase those speeds to nip at the heels of the fiber. And, you know, we'd like to hear your thoughts on that. So I will put that poll up right now. And leave that up here for about a minute or so as we get back to Sakit.
Thanks, Matt. Let's touch a little bit on the 6 gig stuff. You know, as I was just mentioning, that 5 and 6 gig is a separate SKU. So what we have envisioned for 6 gig is a it'd be 4600 AP. It's a 5.9 to 7.1. Gig wide radio. It's a 4x4 multi-user MIMO radio. It essentially follows all the things that we're looking at from an AX perspective. The one couple of key differences here, obviously, is that number one, it's a full 7 gig product, right? So it's covers the entire 6 to 7. Obviously, there's some low power chunks of spectrum in there, but all the standard power stuff and the 36 dBm EIRP, you're able to get some nice wide channels in there, right? So I picked up some noise in the early days as we looked at customers that have done STAs, that sometimes the lower 6 gig seems to be populated by incumbent microwave guys, right? So there's cleaner stuff in the above. But that 6 gig AP, essentially, the other key thing about it is that it will support 4096 QAM. Believe it or not, we got some beta testers that have 4096 QAM on the links. Granted, short distance, but you're able to get there. So 2040, 80, 160 meg channel bandwidth support, all the way to 4096 QAM on a particular high tier SM. There's also going to be a dish-based integrated solution that's going to support 1024 QAM radio product. So that's kind of the 6 gig, very high level. Matt, needless to say, the part of AFC, we can talk about that if you have a question on that, but that's going to be one of the factors, right? There is a frequency coordination aspect for 6 gig. Which,
yeah, what I was on the phone with Comsearch the other day talking about this, and I have so many questions. I'm sure everyone else does. Like, how does it look from you right now?
So first of all, what I will tell you is that if you haven't signed up or if you haven't seen the advertisement for it, there is a webinar coming up June 1st or June 4th. I got to check the date. But we are doing a webinar. We've invited one of the members of Qualcomm technical staff that is driving the AFC implementation with the FCC. So we're going to have something similar to this where I'm going to do a lot of casual question and answers with that gentleman to present to you guys what AFC is all about, right? So it'll be a great way to understand how the math is being done, how you're looking at the incumbent microwave players, how the database will work and all of that. So come to the webinar, learn about that.
Okay.
After that, Matt, sensing, right? And please, this is at the end of the day, I'm waiting for the government to make decisions. So what I'm sensing is, we have customers that are going out there and getting special temporary authority licenses. And, you have to provide equipment information. You're going to get specific locations. And you're able to deploy some 6 gig gear to test it out. As we all know, there's almost 9 vendors that have submitted for AFC operation. What is that the FCC is probably going to allow some of these vendors to go into test mode, just like the hardware, and we'll start seeing people deploy under STA as well as an AFC. But let's just call it seal of approval when 6 gig is full blown out there running. My guess is Q1 2023.
Okay. I think we can probably make a jump into the next subject we want to talk about is the QoE product.
Did you want to spend any time on the poll at all?
Yeah, I shared the poll. I don't know if everyone can see that or not, but yeah, the results of the poll were that most people are going to consider or still focusing on fiber, but there's a decent amount of people that are going to have an emphasis on wireless, and looks like increasing fiber, keeping wireless steady, and then some people are increasing fiber and keeping wireless steady. So it's a little bit of each, kind of an even keel on everything. So it doesn't look like anyone's really changing much of their plans.
Hey, Keith, can you talk for a second about the decision? We talked a little bit about the decision not to have a 5 and 6 gig platform together, but the trade-offs in terms of some of the other products in the market that might not cover the entire 6 gigahertz band and what that means for performance.
That's right. Thanks, Derek. So first of all, the thinking behind us not doing something that goes all the way 5 and 7 is, as I said, quite a few aspects, right? You got the pure engineering creating a 2 gig wideband. It's certainly not something we wouldn't undertake, but given the timeline from the ePMP side of the house, it made sense to try to get a 6 gig product out there, right? And not spend the next few years developing it. So that was one of the justification. Along with that, as you know, Derek, yourself and Matt, we are still trying to create this affordable tagline, right? ePMP, we want to keep costs at a competitive basis. So creating a full dual band product would be expensive. So that's sort of the justification on that front, why we didn't do that.
Would it also, that's a very wide swath when you're going from like 5.1 to high 6s, wouldn't that be just a nightmare for interference too?
Exactly. Don't forget, not just interference, all within that upper levels, right? Your 5.4 has DFS, 5.8 will have high EIRP, 5.2 will have DFS, 5.1 will have low, 6 gig. So you got to avoid channels, move around within that. You deploy something at a certain distance, all of a sudden you have to change the channel for DFS hit, and you're like, wait, my power level has to be different. So the complexity in managing 2 gigs wide of band, 2 gigs of technically unlicensed spectrum with varying requirements, I think that's.
Are you expecting the 6 gigahertz power levels to be somewhere similar to like 5.9, 5.8, or what?
It's pretty much defined, right? It's lower. It's 36 dBm EIRP, right? Okay. So antenna gain plus TX power has to be 36. So it's not like a 5.8 where you can go as high as 52, right? So so your cell sizes are going to be smaller, but you're going to hopefully get clean spectrum because you're going to coordinate with the FC and things like that. And to Derek's original question, Matt, if I may, right?
Yeah.
Right, there's folks out there that are saying, hey, I want to jump on anything that's 6 gig right now, right? And if there are products that go from 4.9 to 6.4, if that's the product you invest in today, you are going to miss out on the channels that are above 6.4, right? And there are some standard power channels there. And as I mentioned something in the earlier part, the lower 6 gig seems to be a bit less prevalent because microwave is on the lower 6 quite a bit. So we've seen people saying, hey, there's some interference in my lower 6, so they've been wanting to go to the upper 6.
Because the lower 6 and point-to-point has the bigger channel, so that's pretty much where everyone goes, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly it. That's exactly it. So if you're gonna in 6 gig solution, you know, our position is, hey, get the full spectrum in your hands, right? So you can play with it and just wait for it and leverage the full band. So Derek, does that kind of address what you were?
Yeah, that's perfect, Saki. There was one other question too that somebody had around who to contact about an STA. I don't know if you can speak to that quickly.
I can speak to that. So we do have a document that we published giving the around our 6 gig product that you can use to apply for a STA. Customers that have successfully gotten the STA. So that document is floating around. If you don't have it, ask your RSM, ask CTI, and we'll be able to make sure that's can allow you to go get the STA.
Perfect. I have a poll up. We had some questions regarding 6 gigahertz and wanted to get some feedback on. Put it up here a minute ago. Looks like we're already getting a lot of feedback on that. So if you haven't already, basically we want to know what your plans are for 6 gigahertz and if you're going to be jumping all in, and it's going to help us, you know, with Saki know how much of the product that they need to focus on engineering and how much CTI needs to buy of it. So really useful information. Now this one, you do have some people that have used out in the field, right?
Yes, there are a few customers that are deployed, and you know, we still have a pipeline of folks that are interested, and I'm trying my best to entertain all the requests, and we'll try to fulfill as best as we can. It's just a matter of getting more hardware in our hands. Great.
Are you okay making a segue into the other new product in the Cambium portfolio?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think everybody's mind is still kind of floating around radio and 6 gig, but yeah, you know, I'll kind of go over at a high level. This is meant to be a conversation and not a sales pitch. So
sure.
We got into the QE business, right? So no big surprise. Part of why we started looking at QE quality of experience as a solution from Cambium is that we see some really interesting opportunities as a vendor who makes radio products, right? So whether it's our 450M or ePMP 3000, we have our hooks into the schedulers and how the radio performs. A QE solution, we could be a company in the sense that we can have integration between our QE appliance and the radio side and do things with our radio performance. So that was one of the driving factors of saying, hey, as Cambium, it's no longer just about building radios with higher order of modulation or MIMO, but is there something I can do with the traffic itself, the products themselves? Can I make that work better? So at a high level, I wanted to answer a question that I think is important. It's like, why is Cambium doing QE? You know, you're building radios. Why don't you just stick to that? Well, I think there's an opportunity for us to be better and offer more value if we got into that space and converted the two. So that's kind of the gist of why we got into QE. Outside of that, the nuts and bolts of this is we have launched a QE solution as of WISPA America in New Orleans, an appliance-based solution that also can be virtualized and whatnot. It has some core functionality today that is pretty unique. First and foremost, as a TCP optimizer, it's a TCP proxy that's doing acknowledgments on behalf of TCP, and like Netflix and web page download and all of that. Yesterday, I spoke to a customer that back and gave us feedback on how things have improved on their network, because everybody the wireless domain knows very well that interference, whether it's the home Wi-Fi unit or your outdoor fixed wireless, you're going to have retransmissions. You're going to have lost packets, right? So if you have something in line that's sitting there working on your behalf and saying, hey, send all the data, Mr. TCP server, it improves the performance. So that's one of the big things. Second thing on this is it's got a powerful DPI engine. So you're able to see like, hey, what's going on my network? What is consuming my 2 gigs of data? What is consuming the 50 meg plan that I sold to customer A, B, and C? And you start to see, all right, it's YouTube, it's Zoom, it's game uploads, etc. From that, you might be able to extract value in potentially upselling new packages or troubleshooting customer tickets that says, hey, my Wi-Fi just sucks, right? Why does it suck? Let me figure it out. So that's the visibility part. And you can get statistics for individual subscribers, et cetera, a lot of information. Once you learn all of that, then you can start doing things like shaping. I had a customer yesterday that started shaping everything from Paramount, DirecTV, Hulu, Netflix, and starting allocating specific pipes to them. So by shaping applications, you're not letting things like BitTorrent at busy hour just take over your precious wireless bandwidth and eat up network bandwidth, right? And causing customer quality issues. So that shaping rules and what you can do with it is endless. There's a lot you can do with it, and it's quite valuable once you start building that around your network offering.
So that's almost like, you as the owner of the ISP, it's like you're in the house being like,
yes, all
right, person in the basement that's doing BitTorrent, slow that down. Person upstairs is watching Netflix. Let's make sure that you have exactly 5 megs and it's not going, because Netflix eats whatever you give it. It's the hungriest thing on the planet, right?
Exactly.
So you're not,
absolutely right.
Your customer signs up for a 10 meg plan and, they're going to get that Netflix at 5 megs so that they have a consistent, great experience. And then the rest of it can be shared from the family or, what should from a very simplistic level, how should an ISP plan on, like, if they visually were seeing this, what would they see it happen and work?
How they would implement things, or what would they see on the network?
Like, what would they see on the network?
Yeah, I have screen captures. Like typically, you'll see Netflix dominate quite a bit of that for sure. But then you'll start seeing home-based applications like the Zooms and web conferencing during the day. But TikTok, Netflix, YouTube are absolutely the dominant stuff, right? I did have a customer, outside the United States that was getting clobbered by BitTorrent, right? So they shaped that and improved the performance. To wrap things up, Matt, along with a shaping, and there's a rate limiting function, right? This is unlike the radio rate limit where it's a very harsh drop packets when you hit the rate. This is like a multi-queue approach where you're application aware. So you're very gracefully dropping packets. On top of that, we have this denial of service detection. So while this is a QE box, there is a security aspect. You'll detect denial of service and show the participating IP addresses. There's some roadmap items on maybe backholing those IP addresses and moving them out. Last thing, this is kind of exciting. We added this feature just not too long ago, is the ability to detect speed test. Mm-hmm. If you give somebody a 50 meg rate plan, and they happen to have 20 megs of traffic that's consuming that 50 meg, mom or dad, whoever is the head of IT comes home and says, hey, I'm going to do a speed test because something's off. They want to call and complain they're not getting the 50 meg. We will detect the speed test and unthrottle the speed test to take up as much as the 50 meg rate plan, right?
Okay.
The whole goal is just try and get rid of that volume of calls that is, hey, my speed test is not getting the package I paid for, right? Because open up the pipe, let speed test take up all 50 meg without impacting the 20 meg that the user is using.
And so something I want to make sure, we're talking, the scope of this originally was ePMP, but the QoE solution is going to work for ePMP, 450.
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely hardware agnostic.
And completely all manufacturer agnostic. Yes. So, yes. There's a lot of people on here that aren't Cambium. This could be their first time hearing about it, and they're using a variety of other brands. And you guys will work with anything out there, right?
Yes, absolutely. The things that I talked about early on why we got into this space is while all the features I talked about works on anybody's network, and for that matter, fiber with Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I was going to say fiber, wireline, DSL, coax, whatever it is you're using.
As we enter this market, the future is even stronger because then we can actually start doing integration with AP utilizations, MIMO gains. I don't want to confuse the two, but I'm just saying that you're absolutely right. It can go in any network, but hey, if you start marrying it up with Cambium hardware, you're going to see some cool things coming out of it. That was the gist of it.
I saw a question that came in that I think is like right on that last sentence you just said about maybe doing some special stuff if you marry it up with the Cambium hardware.
Pete Larson just said it. It's slam dunk. That's exactly something we're looking at. Absolutely.
Okay, so the question was, have you looked at doing an AP level shaper to help with peak hour effects when an AP is completely utilized so that the high utilization would affect bulk downloads? Go ahead.
We're looking at that actually, Pete, and that is a feature. But today there's also already something that looks at an SM-based TCP congestion. So there's a machine learning algorithm that will learn and study and understand if something is congested. And this is based on how much retransmission is happening at the TCP layer. And there, chop off some flows to reduce latency. So there's a congestion management at the TCP level already in place. We just need to take into account now at doing it at the AP level. So there's some cool things already underway.
Can you speak a little bit to the architecture of this? Is this something that somebody would have at just one unit at the POP, or if they have multiple POPs, or one unit, one head end, or a unit at every tower? How should people expect to deploy it?
Right. So Matt, we started with two of a tower model. But the more people I speak to in North America, the NOC model seems to be the more the dominant deployment option. But I will say that the tower model is something that if you happen to have a remote tower where you want to solve the problem because there's high interference, you need to calm the tower down and do some shaping at a localized level, you may choose a tower model, which we support up to a gigabit, but you can do more. But we do have a temperature hardened gigabit per second, 1 gig box, let's just call it. Mm-hmm. The NOC side is more of the traditional model. We'll go anywhere from 1 to 100 gig today, along with virtualization options. Cases, the 10, 20, 40, 100 gigs are essentially Dell R350, 450, 650, 7525, these models, with some generic requirements, CPU, cores, memory, SSD, nothing out of the ordinary.
Because a lot of other vendors, they lock you into their proprietary hardware, and this is you guys are software that they can run on as long as the server has the specifications.
Yeah, exactly, virtualization. So and we're not going to try and go and sell you a bunch of Dell equipment with Cambium overhead. It just doesn't make sense. So buy your own hardware, follow the recommendations, slap on the software, and get a license and go to town. Right.
Great.
Doing trials. That's the beauty of something like QoE. You can do trials. And Matt, one last thing on the deployment side, and I really need to shut up so other people can talk, is that the commercial models, it is not a per SM per month fee, but rather a throughput-based package. If you buy a 5 gig or a 2 gig license, and you happen to have 100 subscribers consuming 1.7 gig, tomorrow you add another 100 subscribers, you only go to 1.8. Everything is capped by the throughput. So up to 2 gig, you're shaping, you're optimizing, you're doing everything you want to do. And then you can step up to a next gig if you want to. So if you're of a very small network, maybe a per SM per month might become lower. A mid to large size network, this model is very, very cost effective.
Perfect.
Can you talk for a second about what people are seeing in the real world when they put this on one tower? What is it? What's the impact?
So I just got off a call yesterday. So we learned a few things. So real world experiments. One customer of ours, they implemented the solution. They went with a 1 gig to trial, but they're going to move to a higher capacity one. They started off by looking at how much they consumed, about 450, 500 meg at a tower. The first thing they did was they just started shaping things like video streaming. Shaping the streams, they basically shaped off about 100 meg off of their tower from a peak capacity perspective. But here's the beauty of it. By 100 meg by shaping, but there was not a single issue in terms of quality. Because even though you shaped, you gave it enough performance for the streamers, but then TCP optimization also started working in the background. So you saved a bunch of bandwidth on your AP, yet you had no issues on quality. And people were actually happy with the way Netflix was working and web page, everything was zippier and faster. So that's exactly from a customer yesterday. Another example I have is somebody that had a 5 gig backhaul and on a root power mat, they were looking to upgrade that to, I think, an 80 gig solution.
Okay.
Maxing out capacity. Once they got our box, they started looking at the visibility. They saw there was a lot of Xbox game uploads and things like that eating up bandwidth. Started shaping that. So they're not letting things run on throttle. And they were able to keep the backhaul in 5 gig and save some money on the backhaul. So there's numerous ways. Last but not least, you can even go back down and look at customer service calls, right? Has that gone down? Because I'm not getting speed tests, throughput complaints. I'm not getting Netflix buffering complaints because the Cambium box is taking care of some of these things, right? So there's many ways to quantify it, but fundamentally there's a throughput savings, call volume, overall quality of experience of end customers.
Yeah, and so the pricing is actually really impressive. That 1 gigabit is, I tell people, hey, it's a really affordable product. If you want to check it out, you can use the Cambium appliance or you can virtualize it, but it's a very affordable way into just getting your hands on it and giving it a try. And in my mind, when I talk to some people that are smarter than I am, it sounds like they're able to delay those network upgrades like you were talking about with the 80 gigahertz, but also it's able to spread that time between network upgrades. If you're normally having to upgrade technology every couple of years, having a well-optimized network is going to delay that, almost another couple of years beyond that. So, outside of just not blowing through your bandwidth, you're going to have a lot of capital expenditure savings as well.
Exactly.
And Saki, we actually have some folks that are primarily wireline fiber providers that have experimented with it as well. So it's not something that's limited to wireless technology, correct?
Absolutely. In a couple of things, right? The wireline guys still have packages, right? You have to rate limits, even on the fiber side. So there's things like that absolutely apply. And no matter what you're using, we all realize at the end of the day, it's Wi-Fi that connects our laptop and phones. So whether it's that multiple mesh nodes that you have in your big home or the cheap TP-Link router that you have, right? The problems don't go away, right? At the end of the day, a gigabit fiber to the home doesn't mean quality of experience for the end user.
Sure.
That's my wisdom of the day.
Yeah. Hey, Sakid, will all this be visible in Maestro to where you can kind of see it under that one pane of glass, especially with some of the layer 7 application stuff? Will you be able to go in and like you said, see, Netflix or, or different applications that are hogging it up?
Yeah, so Justin, that's another very exciting part of the vision is that we've got all these radio stats in Maestro, right? RSSI, SNR, APSM, et cetera. In application level stuff, hey, TCP retransmission, all of that and bringing a Maestro view that truly is going to be like AP health, right? Which AP is utilized heavily, which one you can add more subscribers, like it can take it to a whole nother level, right? So that is definitely part of our vision. It's probably an area where we're just a little behind in terms of presenting a lot of that. We've been very focused on the core functionality, but to your point, that is definitely one of the strong roadmap items coming together.
That's great. I mean,
good question.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say this is great because it really ties in traditionally, an MSP would have this functionality inside of a dwelling or a home or a business. Right. Now, not only having it inside, but taking it outside to have that complete experience.
Somebody asked a good question around if you do purchase the 1 gigabit option, can you deploy it in multiple locations?
Well, the answer to that for
purchase.
Yeah. So Chris, the answer is, so the lowest entry point is a gig, right? So you're essentially talking about, hey, can I buy a gig license and spread it across multiple networks? The answer is no. But if you wanted to do something like that, you could potentially buy a 2 gig license and spread the 1 gigs in 2 locations. It's just that the way we're set up, 1 gig is the lowest we've gone. Now, if you come back and say, and if we conclude that low, people might want to do a tower model where 500 meg is what you want to consume in one and 500 in the other, we could look at breaking it down one level below 1 gig and say, we'll offer a 500 meg pricing. You buy 2 of those, you put it in 2 towers. Still kind of learning. So these questions are very good, and hit me up offline and help me do this. And we're open to ideas and changing the model.
Yeah, I'd like to say that this is something that it has come from customers' feedback, and Cambium's been really nimble to build products to service the service provider and the managed service provider market. And you guys are quickly evolving. So, people's suggestions are taken to heart, and you guys take it and run if it's something that you think you can do better than what's on the market today. Looks like, is there any additional questions anyone has? Throw them in there. And then Sakid, do you want to maybe talk about, I think that there's a promotion going on for the QoE right now?
There's something where we're talking about, the first 20 customers that sign on, they get a 6-month free subscription on top of whatever they sign up for.
Okay.
So that's first 20 globally. So the window's closing. So if you're on the verge of it, come and jump on it. Having said that, we're also looking at doing something new to generate more interest in getting people. But I will leave everyone with this, that, Matt, trials are, it's easy to do a trial. Spin up a box, we'll give you the software, we'll activate the license, run it for 30 days. All we ask is you put the time into testing it. And at the end, if you don't like it, fine, we move on. No big deal. But if we give you a 30-day trial, we ask that you put the time in, but hit me up, hit up Matt. We'll open up as many trials as you want.
Yeah, it's been exciting to work on this so far. And with that, we're running up against the hour here. Any of our panelists here have anything else they'd like to share before we call it an end for the day?
No, Sakid, could you just give a quick, there was a question about MSRP on 1 gig. I don't know if you, just to give an idea to the group or what.
Yeah, I think the 1 gig comes to just about $3,000 a year. MSRP on the 1 gig is, $3,046 if you do a 1-year subscription. So it comes to about $270 a month. If you go ahead and do it for 5 years, it's $162 a month.
Thanks, Sakid. No, man, I appreciate the opportunity for us to present today. Certainly appreciate everybody's time and interest. And I mean, we're excited. We're excited about 6 gig. We're excited about next gen 4500 on ePMP. And certainly, this QoE solution has a play that we've never really participated with other radio manufacturers or wireline operators. So I think this is it's unique. It's a little bit of a conflict of interest, and we certainly want to be ripping out networks and replacing them with ePMP. But in this case, in some cases, we're actually extending the life of those networks, but that helps our operators as well.
Sure. The only other thing I was going to add is thank you for everybody for hanging out the whole time. I've never seen so many questions come in a webinar. So the ones that we missed that have been flying through here, we'll come back and address them if it wasn't something that specifically was talked about here. So, don't feel like we skipped you over. And Derek was handling some of the hard ones, but we really hope that you guys see that we're kind of an open book when it comes to CTI and Cambium and how we're growing together with our customers. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
For hosting, Matt. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Thank you.